Prevention is the key to a healthy life. That's why Gunderson Health encourages you to learn about vaccines and how they can help you and your loved ones stay healthy. Vaccines protect against preventable diseases and viruses by boosting your body's defenses. Visit GundersonHealthFacts.com to learn more. Artspire is back on June 10th at the Pump House Regional Arts Center. Enjoy live music from Nicholas David, Charlie Boy, and High and Rising, plus a fine art fair, interactive art projects, and visual and performing arts. The event is free to all. Learn more at artspire.thepumphouse.org. Recently, we got on the line with Reconnected Farms out of Dorchester, Iowa, to chat farming and gourmet and medicinal mushrooms. We chatted about the origins of this diversified family farm and dive into vertical growing and the fungi kingdom. You can find more conversations, food reviews, live music, weekend picks, and events on our website, lacrosselocal.com. I'm Amy.
And I'm Brent.
And this is Lacrosse Local.
I grew up in Dorchester, Iowa. It's right on the Minnesota-Iowa border. I grew up on a farm, actually 5 miles north there. I went to school in Spring Grove, Minnesota. Grew up in the country, just south of Spring Grove, then I graduated in 2015, and then I went to school in La Crosse. Went to Western Technical College for 3 years, and then I got my bachelor's at Viterbo after that for marketing. And then after that, I was actually a marketing consultant. I worked at River Valley Media in La Crosse for, I think, about 8 months after graduation, and kind of just growing up on a farm in the country, just kind of realized that wasn't for me to work in an office. Ended up listening to a podcast actually about lion's mane, one of the mushrooms we grow, and the health benefits of it. Became curious about it and looked at buying some of the supplements and thought the supplements were a little overpriced. So I ended up buying a grow block and growing some on my kitchen counter, and kind of fell down the rabbit hole after that. Realized that I couldn't find this mushroom in any of the local grocery stores. Realized that there's like this whole world of different mushrooms that we don't eat or consume in this country, and that there's other parts of the country where there's specialty growers doing this. So I kind of just saw a niche and an opportunity there, and just kind of started learning how to grow the actual mushrooms at that point, which was definitely the most tedious and just a lot of mistakes and trial and error with that throughout the years, and still kind of tinkering around with that.
So it's a relatively new, right? Was it directly related to COVID then coming out in 2020?
Yeah, so it was pretty, I actually started about 2 months before COVID happened. So when I started, I was working at River Valley, and I actually had a part-time job at Hertz Rental Car too. I had worked there all through college and was still working there part-time. So I was going to start working on the business and work part-time at Hertz. But then obviously the rental car agency went way down after COVID happened. And then kind of all my plans were falling together right in front of me, because they were talking about canceling the farmers market and all that. And restaurants were going to be a huge part of our gourmet business. So that was definitely a challenge starting at that time. But I guess the positive was that I had a bunch of free time on my time, and really, I guess, just dedicated myself to learning and, reading and just doing anything I can to learn about it, and then trying to put it to practice and with whatnot.
So can you kind of give us a frame of reference? I've seen a few videos of mushroom growing, usually kind of vertically grown on shelves.
Yeah, we vertically grow. It's an indoor setup. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to grow mushrooms. You can grow them outdoors seasonally on logs. You can have a greenhouse and do it seasonally. But really, if you want to grow them and have a consistent crop every week of the year, like we do and supply grocery stores, you got to do it out inside, just so your mushrooms grow in a very specific temperature, humidity level, oxygen level. It's just a lot of factors to kind of vary in there. So yeah, so it's vertical shelves. Our grow room's an 8x40 refurbished semi-trailer. So, and then I just put up FRP shelves and just made the whole thing tight and waterproof as I could, because obviously you're pumping a lot of humidity in there, and a lot of fresh air exchanges going through. But yeah, there's points where it's those vertical shelves, there's mushroom growing on there, and the humidity is so thick in there with fog that you can't see.
Wow.
And then there's times where I'm exchanging fresh air and doing that where you can see everything a lot better. And that's kind of like the natural state of how mushrooms grow in the woods or something. Is usually it's rain. And when it's raining, that's obviously, 99% humidity out in the woods. and that humidity is what triggers mushroom fruiting. And then after that, obviously, it's going to be a little drier, and then we're just kind of constantly fluctuating our humidity, fresh air, and temperature. And we're keeping the grow room between 58 and 65, depending on the time of the year. Usually in the winter, it's 58. In the summer, it's 65.
Oh, so, I've got one of those boxes of grow your own mushrooms, and you can kind of cut off them and just keep on growing them a little bit. What is that process like? How much do you grow a week? Like, is it something that's continuous, or do you have to,
Yeah. So those
plant
blocks,
spores?
we make those blocks. So we start off, we mix some sawdust that we get from a local sawmill that's about 10 miles from our farm. We just get giant piles of that, and we supplement it with soy hulls, which are just the outside fibrous part of a soybean. And that's like 30% of the ration, and then 70% just sawdust. We mix that into a bag with water, and then we mix that all together, and then it goes into a sterilizer, because the only thing in there needs to be your mushroom mycelium, or your spores or mushroom mycelium. And so we sterilize everything in there. It sits in a room for a couple days, and the room gets up to 200 degrees at the end. The trick is to just keep it above 180 for about 30 hours. And right now we're doing about 215 10-pound blocks a week. And each one of those blocks are going to do between 2 to 4 pounds of mushrooms. So then after that, it goes into our lab. We add the mycelium to those bags. After the mycelium is added in the clean room, the bags are then put in our incubation room for about a month. That mycelium grows through the substrate and essentially consumes it. But then when it's done consuming it and colonizing that substrate, then you cut it open and bring it into the grow room. And it's that surge of oxygen and humidity it's getting in the grow room that's triggering it to fruit. But yeah, and then you can keep getting fruits off each one of those blocks, but each fruit after that is going to be smaller than the first one. And then the longer you have it in there, the higher the chance of something going wrong. So each of our blocks stay in there for about a month. And depending on the mushroom, we'll get as many as 3 flushes. That usually doesn't happen, usually closer to 2. And some of them will actually only get 1 flush off of. So then a quarter of our grow room is taken out every week. And then a quarter of our grow room is refilled every week. So then we take out that quarter of the grow room that week. We completely clean that quarter. We run a bunch of fresh air through there just to kind of push any leftover spores from that last crop out of the grow room, give it a deep clean in that quarter section and the floor. And then after that, we bring in the new blocks, and that's when we have a huge humidity fluctuation after we pumped all the fresh air through. And yeah, it's just kind of a constant cycle of just taking out a quarter of it and refilling it and taking out a quarter. But yeah, using that right now, we're doing around 250 to 300 pounds a week.
Wow.
This summer, we'll probably be pushing 300, 350. I'm hoping to even get to 400. And we're not quite to max capacity, but max capacity, we'll probably be doing 400 to 500 pounds a week. And that's kind of where we're trying to get to.
I don't know why I've never really thought about this. I know I've had the occasional mushroom burger, the sort of mushrooms you're growing. You kind of referenced in your website, reconnectedfarms.com, about mushrooms being a good protein replacement. Have you seen an uptick in that recently?
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why it's such a growing industry is just plant-based diets. Their mushrooms are roughly, it depends on the mushroom, but they're anywhere from like 30 to 50% protein. Just, I guess, the macronutrient content. There's not a lot of calories to them. So the actual protein content per pound doesn't look like much, but I guess just the percentage wise, they're pretty densely protein. So I think we've definitely seen an uptick from that. And I think just people learning about different mushrooms, and, the typical mushrooms we see are like button mushrooms, community mushrooms, portobello mushrooms. And those are actually all the same species of mushroom. They're just grown in different ways. You can kind of manipulate how a mushroom looks depending on how much fresh air you're giving it or how much light it gets. So like a portobello mushroom, they look like a different species than button mushrooms, but it's actually just a button mushroom that's getting way more fresh air and a lot of light, and it makes it grow more cappy than like a button mushroom and larger. And then shiitakes have grown in popularity through the decades too, and that's a different species. So I think just people think of all the different plants you eat when you go to the grocery store, all the different species. I think there's just a whole world of fungi that we're just really not tapping into. And overseas, they do eat, a lot more of these mushrooms, a lot more familiar. So I think as people get a little bit more familiar, with the different tastes and whatnot, and realize just how different tasting each of these mushrooms is. I think more people are gonna find a mushroom they like. I've definitely had people tell me they don't like mushrooms, which and then try different species of mushrooms from me, and then realize that not all mushrooms taste the same, and find one that they like.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's a big education component. I mean, even versus price too, and I feel like feel like anytime you're dealing with, and not necessarily a protein or replacement, because a mushroom could stand alone. I love mushrooms. I love different kinds, but sometimes when you put it in the same sentence as an alternative to hamburger, it makes people angry for some reason.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's
yeah,
it's like you're buying a thing of salmon, or you're buying kind of a quality product like it. It's its own standalone thing, and it has its own flavors, and
yeah,
it's not supposed to be seen as some replacement. It's just a good
yeah,
protein for you.
yeah, for sure. I love putting mushrooms on steaks and whatnot, and it can even be an addition to a protein. And there's a lot of different just vitamins that are in mushrooms, or just compounds that you don't find in like other food kingdoms, like the plant and animal kingdom, or meat and plants. Just things that you can't find.
Became aware of you. I was shopping over at Free Range Exchange, grabbing a breakfast burrito and just checking out the local products. Where else are you? Like, how do people grab your mushrooms?
Yeah, we're I believe in 13 grocery stores now, and we're in a lot of restaurants. We deliver to Onalaska, La Crosse. We stop in Hoka. We go to Winona, Rochester, and Decorah, and we're in a lot of Hy-Vees. We're in 5 Hy-Vees between Winona and Rochester. We're at Bluff Country Co-op, the People's Food Co-op in Rochester and La Crosse. We're at Woodman's over in Onalaska. We do a lot of business with Woodman's over there. They were one of our first stores, actually. Yeah, and then Toyota Co-op in Decorah. Been with them a long time. Viroqua Co-op. We actually go up to Viroqua once a week and drop off mushrooms there. But yeah, as far as restaurants, you mentioned Free Range. They're kind of a grocery store and a restaurant there. We've been with them. They were the very, very first store we ever sold to. And then we got Apothic in La Crosse, takes our mushrooms every week. They make a lot of ramen and whatnot with it.
Oh yeah.
Up in Rochester, we sell to Forager Brewery a lot, and some other restaurants on and off. Also, we do sell direct on our website and ship. And we either ship with delivery service Speedy, or we just deliver ourselves if it's close enough. And we sell mushrooms and grow blocks online that way as well.
Huh. You're also doing, turkeys, right? Too? Is that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
a side project?
Yeah, it's a seasonal thing for us. Yeah, so I grew up on an organic crop farm out here. We've done a bunch of different. My dad's done a lot of different animals and whatnot. When I was a kid, he was a Nyman pasture raised pork farmer. So I grew up on a Nyman pork farm actually, and I think he started that when I was probably 6 or 7, and did that till I was 14, 15, and then he got strictly into organic crops, and he's grown that a lot. So we got a lot of access to land through that. And this summer we did just seasonal Thanksgiving turkeys. We just do one flock a year. We sell them on Thanksgiving. We deliver them. We start them around the beginning of July. The turkeys are literally never outside. I mean, never inside, not outside. But they're never inside. Even when we're incubating them, it's in a greenhouse, so they're still getting sunlight from day one. And little turkey poults are pretty finicky. But yeah, last year was the first year we did that. But yeah, we rotationally graze turkeys in the summer. So yeah, they started in that greenhouse incubator. Then around 4 or 5 weeks old, we have a little pasture that we plant for them. And they're in a portable fencing, and they get moved pretty regularly. Towards the beginning, it might only be once a week, but then towards the end, they're getting moved every day, getting on fresh pasture. They're eating a bunch of bugs. That was a lot of fun, especially just getting out in the summer, being able to do outside. But it definitely got it's already the busiest time of the year for us, and then just adding that on top, because we did that. It was my little brother and I and my dad did that last year. So that was a little bit more of a partnership between the three of us.
So it sounds like not only, you can get your mushrooms throughout the whole year, but now, you got to come prepared for Thanksgiving. So you can get a turkey, and then you get all the mushrooms for all the stuffing, all the additional stuff.
And I try to keep the website up to date with what we have in stock and whatnot. Try to grow enough of everything, a little bit of a surplus, even a lot of weeks.
What's your favorite mushroom?
I think, as far as on its own, I think as far as the ones I grow, lion's mane probably. Just if I'm eating on its own, I just cook that one up with butter, garlic, or I guess oil too sometimes. And it has almost like a seafood texture, and that's really meaty mushroom. So if I'm eating on its own, probably lion's mane.
Lacrosse Local Podcast is a production of River Travel Media. Do you have an interview idea you'd like to share with us? Message us on Facebook at Lacrosse Local. Find out more about us at lacrosselocal.com, and you can subscribe to the Lacrosse Local Podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you like us, rate us 5 stars. We appreciate it.